There are places that the map doesn't show, paths that the ground hides as if guarding a memory that still breathes beneath our feet. And sometimes when the world seems too silent, it's as if the earth itself whispers, "Look down, there's something waiting to be remembered." Since the beginning of time, human beings have looked up to the sky seeking answers, but perhaps the oldest questions are underground. Under the mountains, under deserts and oceans, there are roots carved by hands that history forgot, tunnels that cross continents connecting civilizations that they should never have met. Who built them, and why? Some say they were shelters, others believe they were temples. There are those who swear that they were portals, paths to another time, another dimension, another state of consciousness. But before any explanation there is a feeling, the same thing we felt when we enter into silence and something inside us awakens. Because maybe these tunnels they are just under the earth. Perhaps they are within each of us. The ancients called it descent, the act of walking into the darkness until find the light again. The Greeks spoke of initiatory caves, the Andeans of labyrinths sacred, Tibetan monks from hidden doors under mountains that led to Agartha, the hidden realm of wisdom. In all these stories, the underground was not the end. It was the beginning, the womb of the earth where the spirit learned to be born again. Modern science has dug for miles in search of minerals and data, but what it finds, under ruins, under pyramids, in petrified deserts, looks more like a signature left by someone who knew what they were doing. Stone blocks cut with impossible precision, straight tunnels for kilometers, without primitive tool marks. Entire cities under the rock as if the past had chosen to live hidden from the future. What if the truth about our origins lies not in what we look at above, but in what did we forget below? What if the ground we walk on is a buried book whose pages can only be read by who has the courage to come down? If you feel like certain things are no coincidence, maybe this video is what you needed to hear. Because this journey doesn't start by looking at the sky. It starts by accepting dive into what the world hides. Beneath the crust we call home, there is a second world, silent, cold, and paradoxically, alive. Geologists describe it in layers and numbers, but the ancients called it the womb of the creation, a space where time is not chronological but circular, where the sound of disappeared civilizations still echo, like pulses of the planet remembering what was forgotten. Ever since humanity learned to name fear, it has associated it with darkness. And if the dark is not absence, but origin, in the ancient scriptures of the East, there is talk of a hidden kingdom beneath the Himalayas, Agartha, where luminous beings would keep the records of extinct civilizations. The Mayans spoke of underground passages that led to the world below, Xibalba, a place of tests and rebirths. The Greeks said that the initiates of Eleusis went down to the caves to face death symbolic before returning to the surface transformed. In all these myths, the underground is not a prison, it is a portal. Modern geology confirms that there are vast cave systems crossing continents whole, connecting regions that would never meet on the surface. Source tunnels, nature mixed with passages carved by human hands, and that's where science stumbles in memory. Because some of these routes were made with precision and geometry that defies technology of its time. Straight lines, perfectly calculated ventilation shafts, blocks fitted together as if the stone had become malleable in the face of knowledge forgotten. Perhaps that is why, in all ages, the myths beneath the earth echo the same pattern. No, they are isolated stories, but fragmented memories of something common. The Hopi, in the deserts of North America, narrate that they came from the interior of the earth after a great flood. The Egyptians described the Duat, an underground kingdom where the sun was reborn every year. Dawn. Andean peoples have legends of tunnels that connected Lake Titicaca to temples invisible, and Tibetan monks still point out mountains that, according to them, hide entrances sealed for ages, paths to cities of light. All of this may seem symbolic, but the symbol is the language of that which cannot be said. The descent is the same movement of the soul that seeks meaning when the world becomes noise. To descend to the earth is to descend into oneself. Maybe that's why the planet and the spirit share the same verb, dig. When we dig into the ground, we find traces of what we once were. When we excavate the consciousness, we find traces of what we still are. What if, at some remote point in time, An entire civilization understood this. What if these tunnels were not just physical routes but symbolic pathways, attempts to leave it recorded in the body of the earth, a map for the return of consciousness? Some scholars suggest that ancient civilizations could have survived cataclysms, global cities taking shelter in underground cities. Others go further. They believe that the tunnels they connected the planet's spiritual centers, like nerves of a greater consciousness. Maybe the ancients didn't dig to escape, but to remember, because under every stone, there is a question, and, beneath each question, an echo that whispers, not everything below is past. In 1963, a man in Turkey tried to renovate his house, broke down a wall, and discovered a tunnel. Behind him, another. Then, stairs, corridors, wells. What it looked like a simple hole turned out to be the entrance to an entire buried city, Derinkuyu, 18 stories below the surface. Corridors capable of housing 20,000 people. Half-ton stone doors that swung at a touch. More ventilation shafts deeper than inverted skyscrapers. Who built this? And even more disturbing, why? Archaeology suggests that Derinkuyu was excavated more than 3,000 years ago, perhaps by Hittites. But the very perfection of the galleries contradicts the hypothesis. The walls are not crude, they are calculated. There are chapels, cellars, schools, grain deposits, water channels pure. It's not an improvised refuge. It's a city on purpose. Some believe it served as a shelter in times of invasion. Others say it was a stone ark, made to resist fire and ice. But there are those who see in it a temple, a school of the soul, where man learned to survive in his own shadow. And she's not alone. Across Cappadocia, there are dozens of connected underground cities through tunnels that stretch for kilometers. When mapping the subsoil, it is clear that form a network, as if the earth held a nervous system sculpted by a civilization that understood the planet as a living body. On the other side of the world, in Teotihuacan, Mexico, history repeats itself. Under the Pyramid of the Feathered Serpent, archaeologists found tunnels sealed 2,000 years ago. The walls were covered in pyrite, a mineral that shines like gold when reflected in light. No ground, lakes of liquid mercury twinkling like rivers of stars. No body, no throne, no explanation. Just the silence of a ritual that still resonates. Was it a tomb? A portal? A mirror of the cosmos? For the ancients, the underground was not the place of the dead, but the scene of transformation. To go down was to die symbolically. Returning was being reborn. Further south, in Peru, there is the Chavin de Huantar complex, a maze of acoustic tunnels built to alter the mind. There, priests played conch trumpets in galleries narrow. The sound echoed like roars of sacred animals. The one who entered the darkness, I saw nothing, but I heard my own fear roar. This was how the initiate was born again, in the stone womb of the world. And then, thousands of miles away in China in 1992, farmers drained a lake and found something that shouldn't exist. The caves of Longyu. Immense, symmetrical, carved in solid rock with walls marked by thousands of parallel strokes, as if hundreds of craftsmen had worked in harmony perfect. More than 1 million cubic meters of stone removed, without leaving traces, without records, without tools. No ancient text mentions its construction. It's as if the entire civilization had decided to erase its own memory. Derinkuyu, Teotihuacan, Chavin, Longyu. 4 names, 4 portals, 4 mirrors. In all of them, the same pattern. Knowledge that descends. The light that comes from the dark. Perhaps the ancients did not build tunnels to hide what they knew, but to keep what we were. And perhaps each civilization that disappears merely changes address, from the sky to the underground, from matter to memory. If something inside you is awakening, stay until the end. The answer may be here, because sometimes to understand what is above, you first need to listen to what still pulsates beneath the stone. There are places where silence speaks, where the air feels older, as if it carries memories that time could not erase. In many of these underground galleries, the sound of a footstep echoes like a chant, and when the torchlight touches the walls, it is possible to feel that the space responds, as if the stones had memory. In almost all cultures, the underground was synonymous with initiation. For the Egyptians, the Duat was the path of the sun on its nocturnal journey, a spiritual labyrinth that the spirit I needed to cross to be reborn. The Greeks called this process katabasis, the descent into the underworld, where the hero confronted his own shadow before returning with wisdom. Among the Andean peoples, caves were sacred portals. In them, priests meditated for days, until he heard the sound of the mountain, a deep hum that, they said, came from the heart of the earth. And in each myth, a pattern repeats itself. Going down is remembering R. Today, archaeologists measure walls and calculate ages, but the ancients saw in these tunnels that we have forgotten, instruments for transforming consciousness. In Chavin de Huantar, the sound of shell trumpets made the body vibrate. The initiate. I lost track of direction, of time, of myself. When he emerged to the surface, he said he heard the voice of the stone. In Teotihuacan, the passages were lined with minerals that reflected light like stars, an inverted cosmos where man walked inside the sky. And in Derinkuyu, each floor seemed to represent a level of the soul, from fear to faith, from faith to silence. These tunnels were perhaps more than architectural works. They were mirrors of the invisible, replicas of the inner path that we all need to travel. The physical descent was the ritual of inner descent, the symbolic death that precedes awakening. The underground, then, was no longer just stone. It became a metaphor. It became a temple. But there is an even deeper mystery. On different continents, distant cultures represented the same symbol. The circle within the circle, the serpent that swallows the tail itself, the labyrinth that leads to the center. In ancient traditions, the center was the point of reunion with the divine. Therefore, every initiation was an inward spiral, not to lose oneself, but to become one. Remember, what if these tunnels were designed for the same purpose? What if each carved stone was a note from a forgotten song, a frequency shaped to align body, mind, and spirit? Acoustic scholars have already proven that certain caves amplify sounds in harmony with the human heartbeat. Imagine priests singing in unison, the sound reverberating through the galleries like a pulse, the same pulse that vibrates in the chest of whoever listens now. Perhaps these tunnels were instruments, not of escape, but of remembrance. And the real secret is not in who built them, but in what they caused and who came down. Because what descends to earth also descends to the soul. If the universe is a mirror, perhaps the underground is a reflection of what the sky does not can show. Maybe what we call lost civilizations didn't go away, just withdrew into the womb of the world, waiting for the moment when humanity would return to listen. Who taught the ancients to build under the world? Maybe no one. Maybe they just listened to the earth itself, and it responded. There are maps that never reached human hands, nautical charts erased by salt and by time, drawn when the sea still held memories of continents that they sank. And in each culture, there is the echo of the same memory, a lost land swallowed by the waters, where knowledge was light and architecture prayer. The Greeks called it Atlantis, the island of Poseidon, where golden temples reflected the sun and the people lived in harmony with the laws of the spirit. The Pacific people called it of Lemuria, the mother continent, from where the first navigators and masters of cure. In Indian scriptures it appears as Kumari Kandam, a submerged civilization that preceded all the others. 3 names, 3 stories, the same silence. Plato wrote that Atlantis disappeared in a single day and night of misfortune. But, and if it hadn't disappeared, just changed shape? Some geologists have found submerged mountain ranges under the Atlantic that stretch across thousands of kilometers. Sonar and satellites revealed rectangular to large structures depths, reminiscent of walls and roads. Skeptics call them natural formations, but the ancients would say, nothing that resembles a construction is the work of chance. What if part of this continent had survived underground? Many myths claim that the Atlanteans, anticipating the collapse, built tunnels that led to underground refuges, crystal cities guarded beneath the mountains. The Egyptian writer Manetho spoke of divine kings, who before the flood hid their records in sealed chambers. In Central America, the Mayans called these refugees Xibalba, the world underground of the gods. And in Tibet, monks still speak of Agartha, a network of cities lit by a non-solar energy, where the legacy of the old masters vibrates. If we compare these reports, there appears to be continuity. Atlantis, Lemuria, Agartha, not as distinct places, but as stages of the same civilization that learned to exist between worlds. When the sea rose, those who had knowledge went down. What was a continent became a labyrinth. What was a city became a memory. And here archaeology begins to touch the invisible. In 2017, researchers found anomalies under the pyramids of Giza, electromagnetic waves and huge voids, not yet explored. In Antarctica, sensors detected hexagonal formations under the ice, aligned with the field Earth's magnet. They are scattered signs, but each one whispers the same hypothesis. Perhaps part of the past is not lost, just buried. Spiritual traditions say that the Atlanteans do not disappear they feared. They just changed their frequency, who transformed their temples into vibrational chambers, designed to preserve memories until humanity was ready to remember them. And perhaps the world's underground tunnels are just that, circuits of remembrance, conductors that unite the heart of the earth with the heart of man. But what was really lost when that continent sank? Perhaps not just lands and cities, but a form of consciousness, the certainty that everything is connected. And it is this memory that is trying to emerge today. When we look into the abyss of the caves, we feel something familiar. It's like looking at reflection of a forgotten home. Perhaps Atlantis was never a myth, but rather a metaphor for what happens when the spirit moves away from the light. And maybe the tunnels she left aren't ruins. They're paths, return doors to a wisdom that the modern world has not yet dared to. Remember, there is an intelligence behind the stone, something invisible but measurable, an intention that crosses time. When we observe these underground works, we realize that they were not just excavated, they were orchestrated. Each curve, each chamber, each resonance seems to respond to a principle that the ancients knew it well. Sound shapes matter, and matter stores sound. Modern engineers would call this acoustics. The ancients called it vibration sacred. In Derinkuyu, there are rooms that amplify the voice in perfect harmony. In Chavindawantar, the roar of the trumpets creates pressure waves that alter the heart rhythm. And in caves in India, recent measurements have shown that certain notes, chanted in specific chambers, produce geometric patterns in the air, invisible mandalas formed just for the sound. None of this is by chance. It is emotional, spiritual, and sound engineering. Perhaps the builders of these tunnels understood something that modern physics only understands, begins to rediscover that the universe is not made of objects but of frequencies, that everything vibrates, from the atom to thought, and that, by harmonizing sound, light, and geometry, it is possible to open portals in consciousness. Vedic texts already spoke of Nada Brahma, the primordial sound that creates the world. The Egyptians said that Thoth shaped reality through his voice, and Tibetan masters claimed that Om was not just a mantra, but a frequency that aligns the body with the vibration of the cosmos. Now imagine this applied to stone. Underground temples built to resonate with the human heart, transforming vibration into revelation. Some geophysics scholars believe that these locations were chosen because they are over power lines, natural electromagnetic currents that run through the planet, known as ley lines. Where these lines intersect, energy increases. And it was exactly at these points that ancient civilizations erected their temples and dug its tunnels. Not out of superstition, but out of subtle science. They understood that the soil breathes, that the earth pulsates, and that certain places are portals between frequency dimensions. In many of these structures, the measurements follow harmonic proportions similar to those of the human body and the golden number, as if the builder wanted the temple to also be a mirror, an organism I live capable of dialoguing with whoever enters. You don't just visit these places, you are visited by them. The true purpose may never have been to protect bodies, but to awaken memories. Upon descending, the initiate found himself projected onto the walls. The echo returned its own voice, multiplied and sacred. It was there that human beings understood that every descent is, in fact, an ascent inverted. The tunnel didn't lead to another world. It led inside it. Today, we call meditation what the ancients called descent. They built labyrinths for the body to go through what the soul already new, and perhaps these engineers of consciousness have left us a map, a geometry that vibrates, a code that teaches that everything that is deep is also luminous. Because in the end, true technology is internal. The tunnels were just reflections of something bigger, the human desire to understand one's own self, light through shadow. And if there are still hidden passages beneath our feet, perhaps the greatest secret is yet to come. Be in them, but in whoever dares to descend again. And if these tunnels weren't just made to escape the darkness, but to find her, there is a moment when the tunnel ends, and there is no more stone, no ground, no light, just the sound of your own heart echoing in a space that seems to have no end. It is at this point that the traveler realizes the underground path was never outside, but inside. The darkness was just the mirror of what he refused to see, his own origin. All the tunnels, from Derinkuyu to Teotihuacan, from Chavin to Longyu, seem to converge to the same invisible point, a center that is not on any map, but on every human being. The real lost continent is not Atlantis, Lemuria, or Agartha. It's the forgotten heart humanity, submerged under layers of fear, pride, and oblivion. Perhaps every civilization that has sunk has done so by straying too far from itself. And every excavation, every archaeological search, is a reflection of our desire to find what we were before we were just memory. Science can measure depths, date rocks, and scan sealed chambers. But what she calls emptiness is perhaps what the ancients called presence, because there is something that vibrates in these places that no device can capture, a kind of living silence, as if the earth were breathing from within. Monks say the sound of the world is a continuous Om, an eternal note that vibrates even when it is not heard. Perhaps the tunnels are the strings of that invisible harp, tuned to play the heart of who still knows how to listen. Perhaps that's why every time a tunnel is discovered, something awakens in the human soul. It's not just historical curiosity. It's recognition. It's as if the planet said, "Do you remember? They've already walked this way, and maybe we'll walk again." Because there is no progress that can replace the wisdom of silence. There is no technology that can compensate for forgetting the sacred. Ancient civilizations left chambers, inscriptions, and symbols, but above all, left a lesson. The true temple is not on the top of the mountains, but under the feet, and inside the chest. What we look for among ruins is the spark that we forgot to carry. If this message touched something for you, subscribe and follow us. Your soul may be remembering the path. Perhaps the great revelation of the future will not come from a telescope, but from an excavation. Not from the stars, but from the ground. Because what's buried isn't just stone, it's sleeping consciousness, waiting be unearthed. And when humanity hears the sound coming from inside the earth again, perhaps it will discover that it is the same sound as your own heart. The underground journey ends where it all began, in silence. And it is there that the voice of the world and the voice of the soul become one. The tunnel dissolves, the darkness stops scaring, and the traveler finally understands that the light was always inside the stone. What if what we call the end is just the beginning of a memory that the soul has not yet forgot?